What is up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I got a really cool and fun deck tech for you. It's going to be mono red Neheb. I have been making this deck ever since Neheb the Eternal was spoiled like a month ago. So before we get started, go ahead and click that like button. Helps out a lot. Subscribe if you are new. Help me reach 2,000 subscribers. We are almost there. And then click the top right eye icon to vote for next video's deck tech. Let's get right into it. Well, it's called Neheb Burn for a reason. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Neheb the Eternal. This guy is the entire deck. 4 copies of a 5-drop that's legendary. I get it. But we're a mono red deck that plays 25 lands. So, yeah, this Neheb has a Flick 3. He's a 4-6 with a Flick 3. Okay, a 5 and a 4-6 is decent. Dodges a lot of removal. Can't get Grasp of Darkness. Can't get Fatal Pushed. The only things it can get is Stasis Snare, Cast Out, Unlicensed Disintegration, just any like hard removal. But it misses like the early kind of stuff like burn spells. Harness Lightning has a hard time taking this thing out. But anyway, a Flick 3, 4-6, and it says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add a red mana to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So there's a few rules with this card I have to explain before I get into the rest of the deck. If this Neheb dies before that post-combat main phase, you don't get that trigger. You don't get the extra mana. So don't swing into something stupid. If your opponent gained life, let's say you swung with this, they blocked with a creature that has lifelink, right? They get the Afflict 3, and let's say they gain 3 life back. It's not like you're not going to get any red mana because their life total didn't change from the original number. No, they technically lost 3 life, then gained it back. So you're still going to get that 3 red mana. So keep all this stuff in mind when you have this card out. Afflict, also need to probably point out, if this gets double blocked, the Afflict mechanic doesn't go off twice. You still only Afflict for 3. We have some pretty cool tricks with this card, though. Try to keep it as alive as much as you can. I know it's hard with the mono red deck, but it is key to this deck. All right, let's go over the other creatures. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Wildfire Eternal, 4 copies of Combustible Gearhulk, and 1 copy of Chaos Maw. We'll go over Chaos Maw last because it's kind of the more fun card in the deck. There's probably a better card for this slot, but I threw it in there anyway. Wildfire Eternal has a Flicked 4, which is very strong with Neheb. Remember, Neheb, his second ability that gives you the mana on the post-combat main phase can still happen as long as you put him out on your first main phase. So let's say turn 4 you play Wildfire Eternal, turn 5 on your pre-combat main phase you play Neheb. Then you swing with Wildfire, they put a blocker out because they don't want you to cast something for free. Afflict 4, you get that 4 extra red mana. So do keep that in mind. It's not where that second ability doesn't activate in its first turn. Let's say you swing with the Wildfire Eternal first, and then you try to put them out. No, because the post-combat, your beginning of the post-combat main phase will have already happened by the time you play the Neheb. So if you want that second ability for Neheb to happen on your actual turn 5, there's ways to getting him out earlier than that, but you have to play him before the post-combat main phase. But anyway, the Wildfire Eternal has a Flicked 4, which is really nice, and it says, whenever Wildfire Eternal attacks and isn't blocked, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. And we have some pretty good instants and sorceries to cost for free. Just specifically 2, no, there's 3 cards that are really good to hit off Wildfire Eternal. Combustible Gearhulk is another really, really good card in this deck because A, it can refill our hand, draw us 3 cards, or your opponent can take a chance and take a whole bunch of damage. We're playing a 7-drop, we're playing 4 6-drops, 4 5-drops, 4 4-drops. We're playing another 4 more 6 drops. We're playing 2 more 4 drops. So there's a lot of good things you can hit if they don't let you draw. And if they do let you draw, great. You get more firepower in your hand, and you just put a 6/6 first strike out. So that's pretty good. And then the 1 copy of Chaos Maul. It's kind of like the fun card in the deck. Not hard to hit 7 mana at all in this deck, especially after turn 5. And it says when Chaos Maul enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each other creature, which doesn't kill any of our creatures. So you're playing like a monument deck or something. This will sweep the board unless they have like a Selfless Spirit or something like that. But it's a very, very strong card. I know it's a 7 mana 6/6, but most of the times it's a one-sided Wrath for us. The 1 copy I wanted to leave in. You could probably substitute it out if you really want to make this deck a little bit more competitive. But yeah. Alright, let's talk about the non-creature spells. Start at the bottom, and then we'll move up to the more spicy stuff. The stuff the deck really needs to hit. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Abrade, 3 copies of Sweltering Suns, and 3 copies of Vessel of Volatility. Okay, Vessel is a weird card in this deck. A lot of people don't like it. I'll explain why it's in here. Abrade, early game removal, takes out artifacts. No-brainer card in here. Sweltering Suns is a sweeper that doesn't kill any of our stuff. We do have Hour of Devastation in the sideboard, specifically against the Sunmare deck, or the Monument deck that plays things like Archangel Avacyn, Selfless Spirit, stuff like that. But this is a good general sweeper. And then Vessel of Volatility. I noticed in this deck, we have a lot of high curve stuff, and a lot of the times we won't be doing anything early. Well, this can help us use some of our mana early that can be used later in the game. It's basically, you're spending 4 mana to get 4 mana with this card, but originally you play 2 on turn 2 to play this. Then turn 3, you can pop this, and you'll have 5 mana. So on turn 3, you could have a Neheb if they tapped out or something. It's kind of like a ramp, like a mono red ramp thing. I didn't want too many of these things. Most of the vessels have it whenever you sacrifice it, you draw a card. This one doesn't, so that's kind of a downside. It's a really bad top deck, but it's good early game to start playing some of our bigger creatures really, really early. All right, now we're going to move to the spicy stuff. We're going to talk about the last 4 cards all at once here. There's the 4 biggest cards in the deck outside of our Nehebs and our creatures and stuff like that. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Insult to Injury, 4 copies of Inferno Jet, 4 copies of Burn from Within, and 2 copies of Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Let's talk about Chandra first, mostly because don't really need to talk about her. You guys know how good Chandra is. A, she can ramp us with one of her abilities. B, she can basically draw us a card or not. If she hits a land off her first ability, then it's just 2 damage, which isn't too bad. She can destroy a creature with toughness 4 or less, and then her ultimate is game ending. So pretty good. We're playing 2 more in the sideboard against control matchups because control absolutely hates this card. So yeah, Inferno Jet is probably one of the best cards in the deck. We're never going to cycle this away, and I would recommend never cycling this away. This is one of the bigger cards in the deck. Wildfire Eternal, if it doesn't get blocked. Remember, if it... Okay, so this is how the Wildfire Eternal works. I forgot to mention this. It says whenever Wildfire Eternal attacks and isn't blocked, that means it doesn't have to deal combat damage. If they declare blockers and they say no blockers in Wildfire Eternal, you get that trigger even if they try to like flash in something. So on the blockers declare step, they're going to have to kill it. So if your opponent's not aware of that, you can point it out to them. You get the free cast. But if you can free cast an Inferno Jet off of Wildfire Eternal, that is perfect. But the best use for Inferno Jet is playing it on your pre-combat main phase with a Neheb the Eternal out. Or if you have the mana, Insult to Injury plus this, but you know that's a lot of mana, but it can happen in this deck. You deal 6 damage, you swing in with Neheb. Let's say they block it, they chump block it, take 3. Now they just took 9 damage and you get 9 more mana, which you can use to either play another Inferno Jet, you can use to play a huge Burn from Within, you can use to play a Chaos Maw, a Combustible Gearhulk, plus other things. Like, just so much you can do with post-combat Inferno Jet. Also can be something you can hit with Neheb. Maybe the Neheb comes in, gives you a few extra mana. You're able to play a few spells, maybe the Insult to Injury plus Inferno Jet, which will deal 12 damage to them. So, yeah. Burn from Within is probably just as good as Inferno Jet. If you just have like a ridiculous amount of mana, like let's say you have a Vessel out plus a Neheb, and you are somehow able to do 10 damage to him this turn, well, basically, you could just play like an Insult to Injury plus Burn from Within and win the game like that. I know it's sorcery speed. I know that can be a problem for some people, but it is super, super strong in this deck. It can work as early game removal that exiles things. That's pretty good. It can use as a huge fireball to hit to their face. That's pretty good. And just overall, like a perfect card in this deck. Let's go over the lands really, really quickly. We're playing 2 Blighted Gorge, 3 Desert of the Fervent, and 20 Mountains. We really only need to hit like 5 or 6 mana in this deck, and we want to hit it like consistently too. Things like Vessel Volatility can help us hit that 5 mark, even if we don't have 5 lands. If we start overflooding Desert of the Fervent, and Blighted Gorge can help turn our mana into something else, can draw cards. Blighted Forge can do extra damage. I know, Blighted Gorge is, 5 mana, technically 6 mana, because you have to use this land in 2, to deal 2 damage to a creature or player, but it can be the finisher sometimes if your opponent isn't thinking about it. And so, yeah, 25 lands, let's get to the sideboard. All right, in this sideboard, already talked about it a little bit. We're playing one more Abrade. If you're playing like a Monuments deck, this Abrade is pretty good. 2 more Chandra against Control. Resolving a Chandra really, really helps. 4 Hour of Devastation against Sunmare decks, against Monuments decks, or anything where people are playing like Heroic Intervention or stuff like that, where they think they're safe. Hour of Devastation, we'll make sure they're not. 4 Magma Spray against zombies and aggro-based decks, and 4 Shocks against aggro decks. But Shock is the reason I'm playing both Shock and Magma Spray in the sideboard is A, they can both be early game removal, but B, Shock can hit their face for 1 mana, which can be good with Neheb out. So you could take out like an Abrade if they're not playing any artifacts and they're playing a whole bunch of like 2 toughness or less creatures. Shock and Magma Spray can be good in that regard. All right, this is the upgrade section, and I know the main board was about $100. The sideboard was about $90, mostly because of Hour of Devastation and Chandra. But there is some upgrades to be made to the deck, and that is splashing blue. Playing the expensive blue dual lands like Wandering Fumarole, Spire Bluff Canal, maybe like 1 mount or 1 more island or something like that, can really, really help. And the reason we splash blue is to play Negate or Dispel, because counterspells really do hit us hard. If they're not playing counterspells, this deck does pretty well. But you try to play a huge Inferno Jet, you try to play a Burn from Within, and you could just totally get screwed. A lot of control is going around in this standard, and it's just counterspells are everywhere. So this deck does really, really badly against especially just a mono blue counters deck, but you don't see that often. But even a deck that only plays like 6, 7, 8 counterspells will wait for you to play a huge Burn from Within or a huge Inferno Jet, or whenever you play like a combustible or a Neheb or something like that. So keep that in mind. If you play in a group that has a lot of counter spells, your LGS has a whole bunch of like people that play counter spells. That's like the meta with your friends or whatever. You might have to splash blue and play Negate either in the main board or sideboard, because you're definitely going to need it. That's the only upgrades I'd make to this deck, is splashing blue. Taking out Chaos Maw, maybe taking out Insult to Injuries, to get those negates in there, and then remove some of the Desert of Fervence and Blighted Gorge and some mountains to put in 4 Wandering Fumarole, 4 Spire Bluff Canal, and an island. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This is more of a cool deck tech than a super, super competitive one. I have never seen someone actually play this themselves And when I play it, people are like, wow, that is really cool. So if you, I mean, it's $100, but if you want to go out and you want to impress some people like, wow, that's a really cool deck, this is a good deck to do that with. Again, if you know a whole bunch of your friends play counterspells or people at your LGS play counterspells, you're gonna have to splash blue in here to counter those counterspells. You want your burn from withins to go through. You want your Inferno jets to go through. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.